Welcome, brave souls, to Dreadful Diaries, where the shadows whisper secrets and the night holds untold horrors. If you crave the thrill of the unknown, make sure to subscribe and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. Now, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dive into our first tale of terror. It was a dreary Tuesday afternoon when Sarah received the package. The rain drummed against her window, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the otherwise quiet day. She had been expecting a delivery of books she ordered online, but this box was different. It was unmarked, wrapped in plain brown paper, and bore no return address. Curiosity piqued, she set it on her kitchen table and carefully peeled away the layers of tape. Inside, she found a worn leather diary, its cover cracked and faded. The pages were yellowed with age, and the scent of musty paper wafted up as she opened it. The handwriting was elegant yet frantic, filled with a sense of urgency that sent a shiver down her spine. The first entry was dated 10 years prior. Day 1, I can feel it watching me. The shadows have grown longer, and the whispers are louder. I don't know how much longer I can endure this. Sarah's heart raced as she read on. The diary belonged to a woman named Eliza, who had lived in the same town as Sarah. Eliza detailed her descent into madness, describing how she became convinced that a malevolent force was stalking her. The entries grew increasingly erratic, filled with drawings of dark figures and frantic scrawls about the darkness that consumed her. Day 15, I tried to leave, but it followed me. I can't escape. I can feel it breathing down my neck. I'm losing my mind. As Sarah read, she felt an unsettling connection to Eliza's words. The descriptions of the shadows and whispers resonated with her own experiences. Lately, she had felt a heaviness in her home, a sense of being watched. Dismissing it as stress from work, she had tried to ignore the feeling, but now it clawed at her mind. Day 30, I've locked myself in. I can't let it in. I can't let it take me. If anyone finds this, know that it's real. The darkness is real. The final entry sent chills down her spine. Eliza had written about a final confrontation with the entity, describing a night filled with terror and despair. The last line was a frantic scrawl, it's here. I can't hold on much longer. Sarah closed the diary, her hands trembling. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Was this just a story, or had Eliza truly experienced something supernatural? She glanced around her dimly lit kitchen, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist in the corners of her vision. That night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of dread. She tried to sleep, but the whispers from the diary echoed in her mind. As the clock ticked past midnight, she heard a faint rustling sound coming from the living room. Heart pounding, she crept out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway. The living room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. As she entered, she froze. The shadows seemed to pulse and shift, and she could have sworn she saw a figure standing in the corner, just beyond the reach of the light. Panic surged through her, and she turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind her. "Let me out," she screamed, pounding on the door. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around it. It smiled, a twisted grin that sent ice through her veins. "Sarah," it whispered, its voice a chilling echo of Eliza's words. "You've read the diary. You know the truth." Desperation clawed at her throat as she backed away, but the figure advanced, its presence suffocating. "You can't escape it. It's already inside you." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah lunged for the window, throwing it open and climbing out into the night. She ran through the rain-soaked streets, the darkness closing in around her. The whispers grew louder, taunting her, reminding her of Eliza's fate. Days turned into weeks as Sarah spiraled deeper into paranoia. She stopped going to work, stopped seeing friends, convinced that the darkness was always watching. The diary became her obsession. She read it over and over, searching for a way to break the curse that had seemingly transferred to her. One night, in a fit of desperation, she returned to the spot where Eliza had last been seen, a secluded park on the outskirts of town. Armed with the diary, she began to read aloud, hoping to confront the entity that had tormented Eliza and now haunted her. As she recited the final entry, the air grew thick with tension. The shadows around her twisted and writhed, and the figure materialized once more, its eyes burning with malevolence. "You cannot escape," it hissed, reaching out with skeletal fingers. Emily had always been a bit of a loner, preferring the company of books and her cat, Whiskers, to the chaos of social gatherings. So, when she received a beautifully wrapped gift on her doorstep one rainy afternoon, she was both intrigued and apprehensive. The package was adorned with a delicate ribbon and a small card that simply read, "For you, from someone who admires you." Her heart raced with curiosity. Who could it be? She had no idea who might have sent her a gift, and the mystery only heightened her excitement. Carefully, she unwrapped the package, revealing a stunning antique locket. It was intricately designed, with a dark, polished surface that gleamed in the dim light of her living room. She opened it to find a small, faded photograph of a woman she didn't recognize. As she held the locket in her hand, a chill ran down her spine. There was something unsettling about it, but she brushed off her unease. After all, it was a beautiful piece of jewelry, and she had always loved antiques. She decided to wear it, thinking it might bring a touch of elegance to her otherwise mundane life. That night, as she lay in bed, she felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was as if the locket was pulsing with energy, a warmth that spread through her body. She dismissed it as her imagination and drifted off to sleep. But the following days were anything but ordinary. Emily began to experience vivid nightmares, each one more disturbing than the last. In her dreams, she saw the woman from the photograph, her face twisted in anguish, reaching out to Emily as if trying to warn her. Each morning, Emily woke up feeling more exhausted than the last, the weight of the dreams clinging to her like a heavy fog. As the days turned into weeks, the nightmares intensified. Emily started to notice strange occurrences around her home. Objects would move slightly when she wasn't looking, and she could hear faint whispers echoing through the halls. Whiskers, usually a calm and affectionate cat, began to act erratically, hissing at shadows and darting away from unseen presences. Desperate for answers, Emily decided to investigate the locket. She visited a local antique shop, hoping the owner might know its origin. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with piercing blue eyes, examined the locket closely. Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "This locket belonged to a woman named Clara," she said, her voice low. She was known for her beauty and charm, but she also had a dark secret. It said that she was cursed by a jealous admirer who couldn't bear to see her with anyone else. The curse is said to bring misfortune to anyone who possesses it. Emily's heart sank. What kind of misfortune? The shopkeeper hesitated, then continued, "Those who wear the locket often experience nightmares, hallucinations, and eventually, they become consumed by despair." Clara's fate was tragic. She lost everything she loved and died alone, her spirit forever tied to the locket. Panic surged through Emily. She had to get rid of it. But as she turned to leave, the shopkeeper grabbed her arm. "Be careful. The curse doesn't let go easily. You must find a way to break it before it's too late." That night, Emily returned home, her mind racing. She decided to confront the locket, hoping to find a way to break the curse. She placed it on her kitchen table and lit a candle, determined to communicate with whatever spirit was tied to it. "Clara," she called out, her voice trembling. "I want to help you. I don't want this curse." The air grew cold, and the candle flickered violently. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a tempest. Emily felt a presence in the room, a dark energy that pressed against her chest, suffocating her. "Leave me," she screamed, but the whispers only intensified, drowning out her voice. The locket began to vibrate, and Emily felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if the weight of Clara's sorrow was pressing down on her. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed the locket and hurled it against the wall. It shattered into pieces, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive weight lifted, leaving her gasping for breath. But as she looked around, she realized the damage was done. The shadows in her home had deepened, and the air felt thick with despair. Whiskers, who had been hiding under the couch, emerged, his fur standing on end. Emily knew she hadn't broken the curse, she had only angered the spirit. Days turned into a blur of dread. Emily's life spiraled out of control. She lost her job, her friends drifted away, and Jake had been a food delivery driver for nearly 3 years, navigating the bustling streets of his city with a mix of excitement and exhaustion. He enjoyed the freedom of the open road and the chance to meet new people, but lately, something felt off. A string of mysterious disappearances had been making headlines, and whispers of a dark undercurrent in the city had begun to circulate. One rainy evening, Jake received an order from a new restaurant that had recently opened in a rundown part of town. The place was called Elysium Eats, and it had quickly gained a reputation for its exquisite dishes and unique flavors. Intrigued, he accepted the order, eager to see what the buzz was all about. As he arrived at the restaurant, the atmosphere felt strange. The dimly lit interior was filled with an unsettling silence, and the staff moved with an eerie efficiency. Jake placed the order for a lavish meal that included a gourmet steak, truffle mashed potatoes, and a decadent dessert. The chef, a tall man with piercing eyes, handed him the neatly packaged food with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Enjoy," the chef said, his voice smooth but chilling. Jake shrugged off the unease and drove to the delivery address, a large, old house on the outskirts of town. The rain poured down, creating a symphony of sound against his windshield. As he approached the front door, he noticed the house looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds and peeling paint. He hesitated for a moment but rang the doorbell anyway. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 30s, her eyes sunken and hollow. She looked as if she hadn't seen the sun in years. "You have my order?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, here you go," Jake replied, handing her the bag. As she took it, he noticed her hands trembled slightly. "Thank you," she said, her gaze darting nervously around the dimly lit hallway. "Please, come in for a moment." Jake hesitated, but something in her voice compelled him to step inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. She shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here. They're watching. They know when you come and go." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, his heart racing. "The meals, they're not what they seem. People have disappeared after eating from this place. I've seen it happen. You need to leave before it's too late." Before he could respond, the door slammed shut behind him, and the woman backed away, her expression shifting from fear to something darker. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her voice low and menacing. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he turned to flee, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic surged through him as he pounded on it, shouting for help. The woman's laughter echoed in the darkness, a sound that sent chills down his spine. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and he heard footsteps approaching from the shadows. A group of figures emerged, their faces obscured by hoods. They surrounded him, their intentions clear. Jake's heart raced as he realized he was trapped. "Welcome to Elysium," one of them said, his voice smooth and sinister. "You've delivered our last meal." Jake fought against the panic rising in his chest. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "Your life, of course," the figure replied, stepping closer. "You see, we have a special recipe here, one that requires fresh ingredients. And you, my friend, are the perfect addition." In that moment, Jake understood the truth. The disappearances, the strange atmosphere, it all made sense. Elysium Eats was a front for something far more sinister. He had unwittingly delivered food to a group of cannibals who thrived on the fear and despair of their victims. With a surge of adrenaline, Jake pushed past the nearest figure and bolted for the back door. He could hear them shouting behind him, but he didn't look back. He burst through the door and into the rain-soaked night, sprinting down the overgrown path. He ran until his lungs burned, the sound of their footsteps fading behind him. He didn't stop until he reached his car, fumbling for his keys as he glanced over his shoulder. The house loomed in the distance, dark and foreboding, but he was free. Jake sped away, his heart racing as he tried to process what had just happened. He couldn't shake the image of the woman's hollow eyes or the sinister laughter of the figures. He knew he had to warn others about Elysium Eats, but he also knew that no one would believe. Ethan had been working as a delivery driver for a small local service called Quick Drop for just over a year. He enjoyed the freedom of the open road and the chance to meet different people, but lately, the job had taken a strange turn. It started with odd requests, deliveries to addresses that didn't exist or to people who had long since moved away. But nothing could prepare him for what was about to unfold. One rainy evening, Ethan received a notification for a delivery that made his heart race. The order was from a quaint little house on the outskirts of town, and the name on the order was one he recognized, Margaret Hargrove. She had been a beloved member of the community, known for her kindness and her famous apple pie. But she had passed away just a week prior. Confused, Ethan hesitated. How could he be delivering to someone who was dead? But the app showed the order as confirmed, and the address was clear. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, he set off. As he approached the house, he felt a chill run down his spine. The lights were dim, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. He knocked on the door, and to his surprise, it creaked open slightly, as if inviting him in. "Hello?" he called out, but there was no response. Stepping inside, he was greeted by the familiar scent of freshly baked apple pie. The kitchen was warm, and the table was set as if for a gathering. Ethan's heart raced as he looked around, feeling an inexplicable pull to the scene. On the table lay a note, written in Margaret's elegant handwriting, "Please deliver my last pie to my dear friend, Alice." Ethan's mind raced. He knew Alice. She was Margaret's closest friend and had been devastated by her passing. He quickly grabbed the pie, still warm in its dish, and headed back to his car. As he drove to Alice's house, he couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural was at play. When he arrived at Alice's home, he knocked on the door, and she answered, her eyes widening in shock. "Ethan." "What are you doing here?" "I have something for you," he said, holding out the pie. "It's from Margaret." Alice's face fell, and tears welled in her eyes. "Margaret? But she's gone." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice trembling. "But I found this at her house. She wanted you to have it." Alice took the pie, her hands shaking. "Thank you, Ethan. This means more than you know." She stepped back, inviting him inside. As they sat together, sharing memories of Margaret, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. It was as if Margaret's spirit was present, guiding him. Over the next few days, Ethan received more orders from the deceased. Each delivery was accompanied by a note, detailing unfinished business or messages for loved ones. There was the young man who had died in a car accident, wanting to send a final apology to his estranged father. There was the elderly woman who wished to deliver a cherished heirloom to her granddaughter. Each time, Ethan felt a connection to the departed, as if he were a bridge between the living and the dead. But with each delivery, he also felt a growing sense of urgency. The orders were coming in faster, and he began to worry that he wouldn't be able to fulfill them all. One night, he received a particularly chilling order, a delivery to a local cemetery. His heart raced as he drove to the graveyard, the moon casting eerie shadows on the tombstones. He parked and stepped out, clutching a bouquet of flowers that had been left with the order. The name on the order was unfamiliar, but the grave was marked with a simple headstone, Daniel Thompson, 1985 to 2023. Ethan knelt before the grave, placing the flowers gently on the ground. "I'm here to deliver your message," he whispered, feeling a chill in the air. Suddenly, he heard a voice, soft and distant. "Thank you." Startled, he looked around, but there was no one there. The voice continued, "I need you to tell my sister. I'm sorry for leaving her. I never meant to hurt her." Ethan's heart raced. "I will," he promised, feeling a surge of determination. He had to find Daniel's sister and deliver the message. The next day, he began his search, asking around the neighborhood and checking social media. After hours of searching, he finally found her, Sarah Thompson, a woman in her 30s who had been devastated by her brother's death. He reached out to her, explaining who he was and what he had experienced. When they met, Sarah was skeptical at first, but as Ethan recounted Daniel's message, tears streamed down her. Clara had spent years trying to escape her past. At 35, she had built a life that was stable and predictable, far removed from the chaos of her youth. She had a decent job, a small but cozy apartment, and a few close friends who supported her. But every now and then, memories of her past would creep in, haunting her with reminders of the mistakes she had made. One rainy afternoon, as Clara returned home from work, she found a package waiting for her on the doorstep. It was unmarked, wrapped in plain brown paper, and bore no return address. A sense of unease washed over her as she picked it up. She had not ordered anything, and the mystery of its origin sent a shiver down her spine. Inside her apartment, she set the package on the kitchen table and stared at it for a moment, her heart racing. Curiosity battled with dread, but she finally decided to open it. As she peeled away the wrapping, her breath caught in her throat. Inside lay a collection of items that felt all too familiar, a faded photograph, a torn letter, and a small, delicate bracelet. The photograph was of her and her high school friends, taken during a summer party. They were all smiling, carefree, but Clara's heart sank as she recognized the faces of those who had drifted away from her life. The letter was from her first love, Mark, filled with promises and dreams that had never come to fruition. And the bracelet, her mother's bracelet, which she had lost during a reckless night out years ago, was a painful reminder of the rift that had formed between them after Clara's choices had led her down a dark path. Clara's hands trembled as she picked up the bracelet, memories flooding back. She remembered the night she had lost it, the arguments with her mother, the reckless decisions that had cost her friendships and trust. The weight of regret settled heavily on her chest, and she felt as if she were being suffocated by the past. As she sat at the table, tears streaming down her face, Clara realized that this package was not just a collection of items, it was a summons to confront her past. She had spent so long running from her mistakes, burying them deep within her, but now they had come back to haunt her. Determined to face her fears, Clara took a deep breath and picked up the letter. She read it again, allowing the words to wash over her. Mark had poured his heart out, expressing his love and hope for their future. But she had pushed him away, choosing a reckless lifestyle that had ultimately led to their breakup. The pain of that decision cut deep, and she felt a pang of longing for what could have been. With a newfound resolve, Clara decided to reach out to the people from her past. She started with Mark, finding his contact information online. Her heart raced as she typed out a message, apologizing for her actions and expressing her regret for how things had ended. She hit send, unsure of what would come next. Over the next few days, Clara continued to confront her past. She reached out to her old friends, apologizing for the way she had treated them and expressing her desire to reconnect. Some were receptive, while others were hesitant, but she understood that rebuilding those relationships would take time. As she worked through her regrets, Clara also took the time to reflect on her relationship with her mother. She hadn't spoken to her in years, and the thought of reaching out filled her with anxiety. But she knew she had to try. One evening, she picked up the phone and dialed her mother's number, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hello?" Her mother's voice came through, hesitant and cautious. "Mom, it's Clara," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry for everything. I've made so many mistakes, and I want to make things right." There was a long pause on the other end, and Clara held her breath, fearing the worst. But then her mother spoke, her voice softening. "I've missed you, Clara. I've missed you so much." Tears streamed down Clara's face as they talked, slowly mending the rift that had formed between them. They shared stories, laughter, and tears, and for the first time in years, Clara felt a sense of hope. As the days turned into weeks, Clara continued to confront her past, each step bringing her closer to healing. She learned to forgive herself for her mistakes, understanding that they were a part of her journey. The items from the package had forced her to face her darkest fears, but they had also opened the door to redemption. One evening, as she sat in her living room, Clara received a response from Mark. He had read her message and was willing to meet. Her heart raced with anticipation and fear, but she knew she had to face him. They agreed to meet at a cafe. Daniel had always considered himself an ordinary man. At 32, he worked a mundane office job, lived in a modest apartment, and kept to himself. He had friends, but they were few and far between, and he often found solace in the quiet of his own thoughts. That was until the day he received the box. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by a courier who seemed just as puzzled as Daniel. The box was small, made of dark wood, and intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to dance in the light. There was no return address, no indication of who had sent it. As he took it inside, he felt an inexplicable pull, a sense of curiosity that overshadowed his usual caution. He set the box on his kitchen table and examined it closely. Just as he was about to open it, he heard a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Daniel," it called, a soft, melodic voice that sent chills down his spine. Startled, he looked around, half expecting someone to be hiding in his apartment. But he was alone. Shaking off the unease, he opened the box. Inside, he found a collection of small, delicate items, a faded photograph, a silver key, and a crumpled piece of paper with a single word written on it, "Remember." As he picked up the photograph, he recognized the faces of his childhood friends, laughing and carefree at a summer camp. Memories flooded back, days spent by the lake, secrets shared under the stars, and the bond they had forged. But the memory was bittersweet. He had lost touch with them after a tragic accident had claimed the life of one of their own, a boy named Tommy. "Daniel," the box whispered again, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. The voice seemed to resonate with his very soul, urging him to remember the past. That night, as he lay in bed, the whispers continued, echoing in his mind. "Remember, remember." It was as if the box was alive, pulling him deeper into his memories. He couldn't shake the feeling that it held secrets about his life and the people he had lost. The next day, he returned to the box, determined to uncover its mysteries. He took out the silver key, which felt oddly warm in his hand. He searched his apartment for a lock it might fit, but nothing seemed to match. Frustrated, he turned his attention back to the photograph. As he studied it, he noticed something he hadn't before, a small cabin in the background, half hidden by trees. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. The cabin had been a favorite spot for him and his friends. They had spent countless weekends there, sharing stories and dreams. But after Tommy's death, they had all drifted apart, unable to face the pain of their loss. Driven by a sudden urge, Daniel decided to visit the cabin. He hadn't been there in years, but the whispers urged him on, promising answers. He packed a bag and drove to the outskirts of town, where the cabin still stood, weathered but intact. As he approached, the whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a gentle breeze. "Remember, remember." He felt a mix of fear and anticipation as he stepped inside. The air was thick with nostalgia, and he could almost hear the laughter of his friends echoing in the walls. He searched the cabin, hoping to find something that would unlock the secrets of the box. In the corner, he spotted an old trunk, covered in dust. With trembling hands, he used the silver key to unlock it. The lid creaked open, revealing a collection of mementos, old letters, photographs, and trinkets from their childhood. As he sifted through the items, he found a letter addressed to him, written by Tommy before the accident. It spoke of friendship, dreams, and the importance of cherishing the moments they had together. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he read the words, feeling the weight of regret for not having reached out to his friends after the tragedy. "Daniel," the box whispered again, and he realized that it was not just a box, it was a conduit for the voices of his past, urging him to confront his fears and regrets. The whispers were a reminder that he had the power to reconnect with those he had lost. With newfound determination, Daniel returned home and reached out to his childhood friends. He sent messages, sharing memories and expressing his desire to reconnect. To his surprise, they responded positively, eager to meet and reminisce about the good times they had shared. As they gathered at the cabin a week later, laughter filled the air once more. They shared stories, tears, and the weight of their shared grief. The box had given Daniel the push he needed to confront his past and mend the bonds that had been broken. In the end, the whispers faded, but their message remained clear: The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the quiet town of Maplewood. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where the streets were lined with familiar faces and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted from the local bakery. But there was one house that stood apart from the rest, a dilapidated Victorian mansion at the end of Willow Lane, long abandoned and shrouded in mystery. Evelyn, a delivery driver for the local courier service, had heard the stories about the old house. It was said to be haunted, a place where strange noises echoed at night and shadows danced in the windows. Most residents avoided it, but on this particular day, she received an unusual delivery request, a package destined for the very address that had been forgotten by time. Curiosity piqued, Evelyn accepted the order, her heart racing as she drove toward the mansion. The closer she got, the more the air seemed to thicken with an unsettling energy. The house loomed before her, its once grand facade now crumbling, with vines creeping up the walls and broken windows staring like hollow eyes. As she parked her van and stepped out, a chill ran down her spine. The package was small, wrapped in plain brown paper, but it felt heavy in her hands. She approached the front door, which hung slightly ajar, creaking ominously as she pushed it open. The interior was dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay and neglect. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing in the silence. No response came, only the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight, and made her way to the living room. The room was filled with dust and cobwebs, remnants of a life once lived. Old furniture lay covered in sheets, and faded photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments of joy that felt long forgotten. Evelyn's gaze fell on a large portrait of a family, a man, a woman, and 2 children, smiling brightly, their eyes seemingly following her every move. Shaking off the unease, she placed the package on the coffee table and turned to leave. But as she did, a soft whisper echoed through the room, sending chills down her spine. "Help us." Evelyn froze, her heart racing. She glanced around, but there was no one there. The whisper seemed to come from the very walls of the house, a plea that resonated deep within her. Against her better judgment, she turned back to the package, curiosity getting the better of her. With trembling hands, she unwrapped it, revealing a collection of old letters and photographs. As she sifted through the items, she realized they belonged to the family in the portrait. The letters detailed their lives, filled with love, dreams, and aspirations, but as she read on, the tone shifted. The final letters spoke of despair, of a darkness that had crept into their lives, leading to their tragic end. "Help us," the whisper echoed again, more insistent this time. Evelyn's heart raced as she pieced together the story. The family had lived in the house for generations, but something sinister had taken hold of them. The letters hinted at a curse, a malevolent force that had driven them to madness. The last letter was a desperate plea for help, written by the mother, begging for someone to break the cycle of despair. Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn began to search the house for clues. She moved from room to room, each one revealing more about the family's tragic history. In the attic, she found a dusty trunk filled with old toys and clothes, remnants of the children's lives. Among them was a small, intricately carved wooden box. As she opened the box, a rush of cold air swept through the attic, and the whispering intensified. "Free us," it urged, and Evelyn felt a surge of energy coursing through her. She realized that the box held the key to breaking the curse. With newfound determination, she returned to the living room and placed the box on the coffee table alongside the letters. She closed her eyes, focusing on the family's pain and the darkness that had consumed them. "I will help you," she whispered, her voice steady. As she spoke, the air around her crackled with energy. The shadows in the room began to shift, swirling around her like a tempest. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices pleading for release. Evelyn felt a connection to the family, their sorrow intertwining with her own. In that moment, she understood that the curse could only be broken through forgiveness and love. She took a deep breath and began to speak, addressing the spirits of the family. You are not forgotten. Your pain is acknowledged, and your story will be told. You deserve peace. As the words left her lips, the room filled with a. It was a typical Friday night for Alex, a ride-share driver in the bustling city of Crestwood. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter and music, and the glow of neon lights illuminated the sidewalks. He had been driving for a few hours, picking up partygoers and late-night workers, when he received a ping for a ride that would change everything. The pickup location was at the edge of a park, a place Alex usually avoided after dark due to its reputation for being a little sketchy. But the fare was good, and he needed the money, so he accepted the ride. As he pulled up, he saw a figure standing under a flickering streetlight, a young woman, dressed in a flowing white dress that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. "Hey there," she said, sliding into the back seat. "Thanks for picking me up." "Where to?" Alex asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She had striking features, but her eyes held a sadness that made him uneasy. "Just drive," she replied softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I'll tell you when to stop." Alex nodded, feeling a chill run down his spine as he pulled away from the curb. The atmosphere in the car felt heavy, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He glanced at her again, and she was staring out the window, lost in thought. As they drove through the city, the woman remained silent, her gaze fixed on the passing lights. Alex tried to make small talk, but she only offered vague responses, her mind seemingly elsewhere. The longer they drove, the more he felt an inexplicable tension in the air. "Can you take the next left?" she finally said, breaking the silence. He complied, turning onto a dimly lit street that felt increasingly isolated. The buildings were older, and the streetlights flickered ominously. "Are you sure this is the right way?" he asked, glancing back at her. "Just keep going," she insisted, her voice firm yet distant. As they continued down the road, Alex felt a sense of foreboding wash over him. The woman's demeanor had shifted, she seemed almost ethereal, as if she were fading away. He glanced at her in the mirror again, and to his horror, he noticed that she was becoming translucent, her features blurring like a mirage. "Wait, what's happening?" he stammered, panic rising in his chest. "Stop the car," she said suddenly, her voice now urgent. "Please, stop." He slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a halt. The woman's eyes locked onto his, filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "You have to listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am." Before he could respond, the air around her shimmered, and in an instant, she vanished from the back seat, leaving behind only a faint echo of her presence. Alex's heart raced as he turned around, half expecting to see her still sitting there, but the back seat was empty. "Hello?" he called out, his voice shaking. "Where did you go?" In the silence that followed, he noticed something on the seat where she had been sitting, a small, crumpled piece of paper. He reached for it, his hands trembling, and unfolded it. The message was scrawled in a hurried hand. "Help me. I'm trapped. Find the truth." A chill ran down his spine as he processed the words. Who was she? What did she mean by trapped? He felt a surge of adrenaline and a sense of urgency. He couldn't just leave this mystery unsolved. Determined to uncover the truth, Alex took a deep breath and drove back to the park where he had picked her up. He parked the car and stepped out, scanning the area for any sign of her. The park was eerily quiet, the shadows stretching long under the moonlight. He approached the spot where she had been waiting, his heart pounding. As he looked around, he noticed a small plaque on a nearby bench. It read, "In memory of Sarah Thompson, lost too soon." His breath caught in his throat. The name matched the woman's, and he felt a wave of realization wash over him. Sarah had been reported missing years ago, her case still unsolved. The whispers of her story had faded into the background of the city, but now they were coming back to haunt him. "Sarah," he called out, desperation lacing his voice. "If you can hear me, I want to help you." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a soft breeze rustled the leaves, and he felt a presence beside him. "Thank you," a voice whispered, barely audible. "You're the first to care." Alex's heart raced as he felt a connection. It was a typical Tuesday morning when the first strange order came through at Elysium Express, a small delivery service in the heart of Willow Creek. The owner, Mark, was busy sorting through the usual requests when he noticed an unusual delivery address, a rundown house at the edge of town that had been abandoned for years. The name on the order was even stranger, Margaret Hargrove. Mark frowned. He had heard the name before. Margaret had been a beloved local teacher who had passed away a decade ago under mysterious circumstances. The townsfolk whispered about her spirit haunting the old house, but Mark had always dismissed such tales as mere folklore. Curiosity piqued, he decided to take the order himself. As he drove to the address, the sky darkened, and a chill settled in the air. The house loomed before him, its windows boarded up and the garden overgrown with weeds. He parked the van and approached the front door, which creaked open as if inviting him in. "Hello," he called out, stepping inside. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of mildew hung heavily. He glanced around, half expecting to see someone waiting for him, but the house was empty. On the table lay a small package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Mark picked it up, feeling an odd sensation wash over him. As he unwrapped it, he found a collection of old letters and a faded photograph of Margaret with her students, all smiling brightly. But what caught his attention was a note that accompanied the package, written in a shaky hand, "Please deliver this to my sister, Alice. She needs to know the truth." A shiver ran down Mark's spine. He had never believed in ghosts, but the weight of the message felt heavy in his hands. He decided to follow through with the delivery, feeling an inexplicable pull to uncover the truth behind Margaret's life and death. After some research, Mark discovered that Alice Hargrove still lived in town, in a modest home not far from the delivery service. He arrived at her doorstep, heart pounding with anticipation. When Alice opened the door, her eyes widened in shock. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm Mark from Elysium Express," he replied, holding out the package. "I have something for you from your sister, Margaret." Alice's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Margaret? But she's been gone for years." "I know," Mark said gently. "But I found this at her old house. It seems she wanted you to have it." With trembling hands, Alice took the package and opened it. As she read the letters, tears streamed down her face. "I thought I'd lost her forever," she whispered. "I never knew she had tried to reach out to me." Mark watched as Alice absorbed the contents of the letters, which detailed Margaret's struggles with her health and her desire to reconnect with her sister before it was too late. The final letter revealed a dark secret. Margaret had been involved in a scandal at the school, one that had tarnished her reputation and led to her isolation. "I had no idea," Alice said, her voice breaking. "I thought she had abandoned me." As they talked, Mark felt a strange energy in the room, as if Margaret's spirit was present, guiding them. Alice shared stories of their childhood, and with each memory, the atmosphere lightened, as if the weight of the past was being lifted. But as they delved deeper into the letters, they uncovered something chilling. Margaret had written about a hidden truth regarding her death, a secret that had been buried along with her. "I need to find out what really happened," Mark said, determination in his voice. Together, they began to investigate. They visited the local library, digging through old newspapers and records. They discovered that Margaret had been accused of misconduct, but the details were murky. Rumors swirled about her involvement with a student, but no one had ever confirmed the truth. As they pieced together the fragments of Margaret's life, they stumbled upon a name, Thomas Reed, a former principal who had retired shortly after Margaret's death. He had been known for his strict policies and had a reputation for silencing dissent. With a sense of urgency, Mark and Alice tracked down Thomas, who now lived in a quiet suburb. When they arrived at his home, he was visibly shaken by their visit. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice defensive. "We want to know the truth about Margaret," Alice said, her voice steady. "She deserves to have her story told." Thomas hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to overhear. "You don't understand," he said finally. "Margaret was a brilliant teacher, but she got too close to one of her students. I had to protect the school's reputation." "But you ruined her life," Mark exclaimed. Lila had always been a creature of habit. Every morning, she would wake up at 6:30 a.m., brew a cup of coffee, and read the news while getting ready for work. She lived a quiet life in a small apartment in the city, working as a graphic designer. But one fateful Tuesday morning, everything changed. As she stepped out to grab her mail, she noticed a package sitting on her doorstep. It was wrapped in a striking blood-red paper, the color so vivid it seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. There was no return address, no indication of who had sent it. A shiver ran down her spine, but curiosity got the better of her. She picked it up and carried it inside. Once in her apartment, Lila placed the package on her kitchen table and stared at it, her heart racing. The red paper seemed to shimmer under the light, and she felt an inexplicable pull to open it. With trembling hands, she tore away the wrapping, revealing a small wooden box adorned with intricate carvings. As she opened the box, a chill swept through the room. Inside lay a collection of items, a silver locket, a crumpled piece of paper, and a small, ornate mirror. The locket was cold to the touch, and when she opened it, she found a photograph of a woman she didn't recognize. The crumpled paper contained a single phrase, "Your fate is sealed." The mirror, however, was the most unsettling of all. When she looked into it, she saw not her own reflection but a dark figure standing behind her, shrouded in shadows. Lila gasped and stumbled back, her heart racing. She quickly closed the box and pushed it away, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had settled over her. But as the day went on, she couldn't shake the sense that the package was somehow connected to her future. That evening, she decided to take a closer look at the items. She opened the locket again, studying the photograph. The woman looked eerily familiar, but Lila couldn't place her. She felt a strange connection to the image, as if it were a reflection of her own life. The crumpled paper weighed heavily on her mind, and she couldn't help but wonder what it meant. The next day, Lila received a call from her boss, asking her to come into the office for an urgent meeting. As she prepared for the day, she felt a sense of foreboding. The words, "Your fate is sealed," echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. At the meeting, her boss delivered shocking news: the company was downsizing, and several employees would be let go. Lila's heart sank as she listened, her worst fears coming to life. When her name was called, she felt the ground shift beneath her. "I'm sorry, Lila. We have to let you go." Stunned, she left the office in a daze, the weight of the locket and the package pressing heavily on her chest. As she walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that the package had somehow predicted her fate. She felt trapped, as if the universe was conspiring against her. That night, she sat on her bed, staring at the box. The mirror seemed to call to her, and she reluctantly picked it up again. As she gazed into it, the dark figure appeared once more, clearer this time. It was a shadowy silhouette, its features obscured, but Lila felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The figure raised a hand, pointing directly at her. In that moment, Lila felt a surge of fear and anger. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, but the figure only continued to point, as if urging her to look deeper. Suddenly, the mirror began to shimmer, and Lila was pulled into a vision. She saw herself standing in a dark alley, surrounded by shadows. A figure approached her, and she felt a sense of impending doom. The vision shifted, showing her a car speeding toward her, headlights blinding. She gasped, pulling away from the mirror, her heart racing. The next day, Lila decided to take action. She couldn't let the package dictate her fate. She reached out to friends and family, seeking support and advice. She applied for new jobs, determined to turn her life around. But the feeling of dread lingered, and she couldn't shake the visions that haunted her. As the days passed, Lila began to notice strange occurrences. She would find the locket in odd places, as if it were following her. The dark figure continued to appear in her dreams, always pointing, always warning. She felt as if time was running out, and she needed to confront whatever was. In the small town of Eldridge Hollow, nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, there lay an old cemetery that had long been forgotten by the living. The headstones were weathered and cracked, their inscriptions barely legible, and the once proud iron gate was now rusted and overgrown with ivy. Few dared to venture there, for it was said that the spirits of the departed roamed the grounds, seeking solace and remembrance. One crisp autumn morning, a young delivery driver named Mia received an unusual package to deliver. It was an antique wooden box, intricately carved and adorned with faded gold leaf. The address on the label led her to the cemetery, a place she had only heard about in hushed whispers. Curiosity piqued, she set off, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As she arrived at the cemetery, the air grew still, and a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping the gravestones in a ghostly shroud. Mia parked her van and stepped out, clutching the box tightly. The atmosphere was heavy, and an inexplicable chill ran down her spine. She walked through the gate, the creaking sound echoing in the silence, and made her way down the overgrown path. The cemetery was a hauntingly beautiful place, with trees arching overhead and leaves crunching underfoot. As she approached the center, she noticed a cluster of headstones that seemed to stand taller than the rest, their inscriptions clearer. It was there that she felt a sudden shift in the air, as if the very fabric of reality had thinned. Mia placed the box on the ground before the headstones and opened it. Inside lay a collection of old letters, photographs, and trinkets, remnants of lives once lived. As she sifted through the contents, she felt a presence around her, a tingling sensation that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Suddenly, the fog thickened, and shadows began to emerge from the mist. Mia gasped as she saw figures materializing, ghostly apparitions of men, women, and children, their faces etched with sorrow and longing. They surrounded her, their eyes pleading, and she realized they were the spirits of those buried in the cemetery. "Remember us," one spirit whispered, her voice like the rustling of leaves. "We have been forgotten for too long." Mia's heart raced, but she felt an overwhelming sense of compassion. "I'm here," she said softly. "I'll remember you." The spirits began to share their stories, each one more poignant than the last. There was Eleanor, a young woman who had died in childbirth, her dreams unfulfilled. Thomas, a soldier who had never returned home, haunted by the memories of war. And little Samuel, a boy who had loved to play in the fields, his laughter silenced too soon. As they spoke, Mia listened intently, her heart aching for the lives they had lived and the love they had lost. She realized that they were not just spirits, they were echoes of humanity, yearning for connection and remembrance. With each story, the weight of their sorrow lifted slightly, as if they were sharing their burdens with her. "I promise to tell your stories," Mia vowed, her voice steady. "I will make sure you are remembered." The spirits nodded, their expressions softening. A sense of peace washed over the cemetery, and the fog began to dissipate. Mia felt a warmth envelop her, as if the spirits were thanking her for her kindness. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the cemetery, the spirits slowly faded back into the mist, their forms becoming one with the shadows. Mia stood alone, the weight of their stories heavy in her heart, but she felt a sense of purpose igniting within her. In the days that followed, Mia returned to the cemetery often, bringing flowers and candles, and she began to document the stories of the spirits she had encountered. She spoke to the townsfolk, sharing the tales of Eleanor, Thomas, and Samuel, urging them to visit the forgotten cemetery and honor those who had come before. Word spread, and soon the cemetery was no longer a place of fear but a sanctuary of remembrance. Families began to visit, leaving tokens of love and respect for their ancestors. The once forgotten spirits found solace in the hearts of the living, their stories woven into the fabric of Eldritch Hollow. Mia had fulfilled her promise, and in doing so, she had forged a connection between the past and the present. The cemetery, once shrouded in neglect, became a place of healing and remembrance, where the living and the departed could coexist in harmony. And as the seasons changed, the spirits of the forgotten were no longer restless, they had been remembered, and in that remembrance, they found peace. Ethan Cole was an ordinary man living an ordinary life in the bustling city of Crestwood. He worked as a data analyst, spending his days buried in spreadsheets and numbers, and his evenings in the comfort of his small apartment. But one fateful day, everything changed when he received a notification about a package that had been shipped to him, though he had never ordered anything. The tracking number was peculiar, 666-13-13-666. It sent a shiver down his spine, but he brushed it off as a glitch or a prank. He decided to ignore it, but the next day, he received another notification. The package was out for delivery. Confused, Ethan checked his front porch, but there was nothing there. He shrugged it off, thinking it was a mistake. However, the notifications kept coming. Each day, he received updates about the package's journey, and each day, it seemed to be getting closer. It was as if the package was following him, tracking his every move. He became increasingly obsessed, checking his phone every hour for updates. The tracking number haunted him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it was somehow connected to his past. Ethan's childhood had been marred by tragedy. When he was 10, his younger sister, Lily, had gone missing. The family had searched for her for months, but she was never found. The case went cold, and the pain of her absence lingered in their lives like a dark cloud. Ethan had always felt a sense of guilt, believing he could have done something to save her. As the days passed, the notifications grew more ominous. The package was now marked as in transit for an unusually long time, and the tracking updates became erratic. One day, it would show it was in a neighboring city, the next, it would be back in Crestwood. Ethan's anxiety spiraled, and he began to see connections everywhere. He noticed the same numbers in his daily life, on license plates, receipts, and even in the news. One evening, after a particularly unsettling day, Ethan decided to investigate the tracking number. He entered it into a search engine, and to his shock, he found a forum dedicated to strange occurrences linked to similar tracking numbers. The users shared stories of packages that had arrived with unsettling contents, items that seemed to connect them to their pasts in dark and twisted ways. Ethan's heart raced as he read through the posts. Some spoke of lost loved ones, while others described items that revealed hidden truths. He felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that the tracking number was not just a coincidence, it was a harbinger of something far more sinister. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan reached out to the forum's members, sharing his own experience. He learned that the package was likely a manifestation of unresolved trauma, a way for the past to resurface and demand attention. The more he delved into the stories, the more he felt a connection to his sister's disappearance. Days turned into weeks, and the package never arrived. Ethan's obsession consumed him, and he began to lose touch with reality. He stopped going to work, stopped meeting friends, and spent every waking moment trying to decipher the meaning behind the tracking number. He felt as if he were being pulled into a dark vortex, and the only way out was to confront the ghosts of his past. One night, as he sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, the notifications stopped. The tracking number had gone silent. Panic surged through him. He felt as if he were on the brink of a revelation, but he needed to act quickly. He decided to visit the last known location of the package, a warehouse on the outskirts of town. As he arrived at the warehouse, a sense of dread washed over him. The building loomed like a specter in the night, its windows dark and foreboding. He pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, the air thick with dust and silence. The faint glow of his phone illuminated the space, and he followed the tracking number's last known coordinates. In the back of the warehouse, he found a small, unmarked box sitting on a table. His heart raced as he approached it, the tracking number flashing on his screen. With trembling hands, he opened the box, revealing a collection of old photographs, letters, and a small, worn teddy bear, Lily's teddy bear. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as memories flooded back. He remembered the day she had gone missing, the last time he had seen her, and the guilt that had haunted him for years. The package was not just a delivery, it was a call to remember, to confront the pain he had buried deep within. As he held the teddy bear, he felt a warmth envelop him, as if Lily were there with him, urging him to let go of the guilt and embrace the love they had shared. The tracking number had led him,